Your mind feels full but scattered. Maybe you've been scrolling through your phone for the past hour, switching between tabs, half writing messages, and letting a dozen thoughts float around without ever landing. You pick up a notebook, not because you know what to say, but because you need a landing pad for your mind. One line, another. The words feel clumsy, uneven, almost uncertain. And yet, something begins to shift. Writing isn't just putting words on paper. There's real, measurable magic happening in your brain when you express yourself. Brain scans reveal something remarkable. The regions that process emotion and the regions responsible for reasoning start to synchronize, as if two parts of your brain are finally learning to talk to each other. That dialogue is more than reflection. It's neurological repair. When you write, your prefrontal cortex, the part that plans, analyzes, and strategizes, starts communicating with your amygdala, the center that reacts to emotion. That conversation gives shape to chaos. A 2021 study from Stanford found that expressive writing helps the brain recover from stress. The midcingulate cortex, which usually fires under emotional pressure, calms down and coordinates more efficiently. And when you put feelings into words, the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex activates, helping to quiet the amygdala. Psychologists call this affect labeling. Think of it like naming a storm. Once you say, "I am anxious," your brain can step back and look at the feeling instead of being swept away by it. Even the act of handwriting versus typing matters. A 2023 study in Frontiers in Psychology showed that writing by hand activates more areas of the brain than typing. Many of us have experienced this, memorizing through writing notes instead of typing, understanding concepts better when our hands move in sync with our thoughts. Handwriting slows the mind just enough to make sense of itself. So, how do we harness this power? Let's break it down into 3 techniques that can reshape not just your mental state, but the very structure of your brain. Technique 1. Expressive writing. This is for the heavy emotions you carry, the disappointments, the losses, the moments that linger longer than they should. Set aside 15 to 20 minutes. Find a quiet space. Write about it. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about anyone else reading it. Just write until you run out of words. This method, developed by psychologist James Pennebaker, works because your brain treats emotional suppression as unfinished business. Writing completes that loop. Studies show that after expressive writing, emotional centers quiet down, cognitive control improves, and your body feels lighter because the mind stops trying to contain what it has finally released. You might cry. You might feel tired. You might even feel resistance halfway through. That discomfort is normal. Healing often requires a small amount of tension before calm emerges. Here's an example. Imagine you've been carrying a lingering argument with a friend. Instead of replaying it in your head, take the notebook and write, "I feel hurt because..." Write everything, the anger, the sadness, the confusion. Don't censor yourself. Write until the thoughts exhaust themselves. By the end, you might notice your shoulders relax, or a heaviness lift from your chest.
Technique 2.
That's your
Gratitude
brain
journaling.
letting go of unfinished emotional
Now
work.
imagine a different kind of page. Instead of releasing pain, this page is about noticing presence. Write down 2 or 3 things you are grateful for. The smell of rain, a message from someone who cares, a meal that made you feel safe. Gratitude journaling isn't about forcing positivity, it's about retraining your attention. Neuroscientists have found that practicing gratitude activates the ventral striatum and medial prefrontal cortex, regions that regulate mood and motivation. By doing this regularly, you teach your brain to look for stability instead of threat. Be specific. "I'm grateful for my friend" becomes, "I'm grateful for the way my friend listened when I was quiet." That small detail anchors memory, rewires emotional associations, and over time, tunes your nervous system toward balance. Here's a mini story. One woman I read about kept a gratitude journal during a difficult year. She didn't write about the hardships. They were still there. But she wrote about small moments, like a neighbor holding the door or the smell of freshly baked bread. Months later, she described feeling calmer and more resilient, even though the challenges hadn't disappeared. Technique 3. Reflective reframing. Finally, there's reflective reframing, a tool for moments of confusion or challenge. Start by writing down what happened plainly, without judgment. Then ask yourself, what does this mean? What did it teach me? Finally, write one small action you can take next time. This process strengthens the prefrontal regions of your brain that regulate emotional reactivity. It trains you to pause before responding, to see difficulty not as a failure, but as data, a chance to grow. Over time, this builds resilience. You begin to approach stress differently, responding thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. For instance, if you miss a deadline at work, instead of spiraling in guilt, you might write, "I missed the deadline. I learned that I underestimated the time needed. Next time, I will plan with an extra hour as a buffer." You've reframed failure into growth, training your brain to respond instead of react, putting it all together. You don't need to use all three methods every day. Think of journaling as mental cross-training. Use expressive writing when emotions feel heavy. Use gratitude journaling when you feel numb or distant. Use reflective reframing when life feels confusing. Each practice strengthens a different circuit in your brain. Over weeks or months, you'll notice subtle changes. You pause longer before reacting. You remember more clearly. You recover more quickly. Your handwriting becomes a visible trace of your mind, learning to heal itself. We often think of journaling as self-expression, but it's also self-construction. Each word is an act of neuroplasticity, a small experiment in honesty and adaptation. So when you sit with a blank page, don't ask, "What should I write?" Ask instead, "What is my brain trying to tell me?" And then, most importantly, listen. Extra tips for making journaling a habit. Set a ritual. Light a candle, make a cup of tea, or choose a quiet corner. Your brain starts associating the space with reflection. Use a timer. Even 5 minutes counts. Often, once you start, you'll naturally write longer. Be forgiving. Some days you'll write a paragraph. Some days, a single line. That's enough. Progress is in consistency, not volume. Experiment. Try sketches, lists, or letters to yourself. Sometimes the mind speaks more clearly in unusual forms. Remember, your journal isn't for perfection. It's for clarity, healing, and growth. It's where your mind learns to hold its chaos, make sense of it, and gently, patiently find its balance. So pick up a pen. Start today. Let your thoughts land, and watch as your brain quietly, steadily learns to talk to itself.